What's the Church of Scientology so afraid of?
This is SPTV.
Welcome back for some more SPTV. We're not talking about the Danny Masterson trial today. We are talking to Mark Fisher. Mark, how are you?
I'm good, Aaron. How are you doing?
Doing great. So people who've been watching my channel have seen some videos that I've done with Janice Gillum-Grady. And
Right.
you, Mark Fisher, have teamed up with Janice to start a YouTube channel. Tell us again what the name of the channel is.
It's called Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. And basically, because we're telling the stories from, the time period that we were in Scientology and in the Sea organization. And peeling the onion is basically getting to the truth. So that's why we came up with that name.
Awesome. And and for everyone watching, I have a link to Mark and Janice's channel in the description down below. For anyone in the live chat, I'm sure Goldie's putting a link in there, no doubt. So tell us, Mark, we only have about 20-25 minutes to do this chat, but I wanted to do something because we've been talking about doing it for a while.
Yeah.
What years did you personally work closely with David Miscavige?
Well, I first met him in 1996, a month after he joined the Sea organization. I joined in Clearwater, Florida in July 1976, and we were roommates for about a month. And
so hold on, you met him in 1996 or 1976?
1976, sorry. 1976. Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
and so we were roommates for about a month. So that was my first contact with him. But then when I actually worked personally with him, is I ran his office at the Gold in Base from about 1984 until I left finally for good in 1990 when I escaped.
When you say run his office, what does that mean?
Well, L. Ron Hubbard had an advice or an order to David Miscavige because he was the chairman of the board of Author Services at the time, which was a for-profit separate corporation from the Church of Scientology. And so he came up with the idea saying, hey, you're doing all this work for Scientology, yet you're working for me. You need what they call a service facility, or you need some support. So how about this? Run this by the attorneys. The church sets up an office and finances it, but basically they're there to service you and Author Services. So I was chosen to be in charge of that office, called the Corporate Liaison Office, and it was set up in about October 1984, and I was chosen for the position to be in charge. And then we handled David Miscavige and Shelley's domestic and administrative needs, but also I was his liaison at the Gold Base. So I handled anything that he needed done at the Gold Base. We shared an office. We had a sliding door between our office, but basically I was his man at the Gold Base because he was spending most of his time in Los Angeles.
I'm not going to lie. That is terribly confusing to me.
Okay.
Let's pick apart some things that we might be assuming people know, or that you might be assuming I know.
Okay.
There seemed to be an implication there that there was some separation between David Miscavige, L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology, Author Services. I'm not understanding how all these pieces fit together.
Well, they were going through a corporate sort out at the time. I don't know if you've know about that, but basically,
I mean, I've heard of it, but
yeah, they basically were trying to separate out. This is when the creation of Religious Technology Center and the Church of Spiritual Technology, and then there was Church Scientology International and Author Services, right? So, but everybody knows that David Miscavige and L. Ron Hubbard, they had their hands in everything to do with Scientology, even though they were trying to corporately and IRS wise show that they were hands off. But that was complete BS. I mean, they directed everything. So this was basically set up as a corporate way for them to do, things in the church and have the church pay for them and not L. Ron Hubbard. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I wish I did. Let's take a step back. So in the beginning, you said something about L. Ron. Correct me where I have this wrong. L. Ron Hubbard said to David Miscavige, "You're working for me, but Scientology is going to create an office for you." You lost me there totally.
That's exactly, but you have it exactly right. In other words, Author Services was a separate corporation set up to handle L. Ron Hubbard's books and literary works, and also his finances, his money. Okay. And they were separating it out from the church. They were trying to create separation from Scientology, the church, and L. Ron Hubbard and his affairs. So the staff that worked at Author Services, they had to they were put on minimum wage and were paid by L. Ron Hubbard and Author Services and that corporation. They were no longer paid by the Sea Organization or Scientology. And so, but as everyone knows, David Miscavige, he would walk right in and order everything in Scientology, and people listened to him. So this was set up as a way. L. Ron Hubbard didn't want to have to pay. They wanted to give David Miscavige and Author Services support staff in the church, and that's what they did.
Okay, I guess the part that confuses me is that ASI is a separate organization,
right?
And it has a lot of money,
right? But it's L. Ron Hubbard's money. Do you see what I'm saying? It wasn't Church of Scientology money. It was L. Ron Hubbard's money. So he wanted Scientology. I mean, he was a money miser, to a degree. He wanted the Scientology church to pay for the services that Author Services was doing, and so that he didn't have to pay for it.
Oh, I'm getting it now.
Yeah.
So he didn't want Author Services revenue to pay to cover the cost of all the people who were working for David Miscavige. He wanted Church of Scientology revenue to cover the cost of all the people who were working for David Miscavige. Okay.
Yes, because then when we set up the office, we had vehicles, we had copiers, we had equipment, the whole thing. And L. Ron Hubbard didn't want to pay for it. He wanted Scientology to pay for it. But also, literally, they were ordering into Scientology, which they weren't supposed to be doing. So what the idea was, what they were supposed to do is DM or anybody at Author Services was supposed to come to me, and then I was supposed to go to Mark Yeager as the commanding officer of Commoners Messenger Org, or Guillaume Lacerve as the ED-ent, but they went directly themselves. It was just set up as sort of a facade almost. But I did duties for L. Ron Hubbard, but also for David Miscavige at the Gold Base. I was basically his man at the base.
Okay, this is much more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Because I've heard of the corporate liaison office, and I've never truly understood what it was or where it was, which to me, for me to retain information, I have to be able to visualize where things are located and whose faces are there and how they're connected to other locations and faces. So this thing that you're talking about, this was created when L. Ron Hubbard was still alive. When was it created?
Yes. Well, let's see. It was the fall of 1983. It was like October of 1983. He sent down a dispatch, corporate liaison office, and it was his idea. It was like 3 pages long about how to set this up, go over it with the attorneys. You need somebody in charge, yada, yada, yada. And then I was working in RTC at the time, Religious Technology Center. I was in charge of what was called AVC International, or the Authorization, Verification, and Correction, because I had experience as a trained executive and mainly in evaluation and management skills. So I had just been brought up to the base probably 2-3 months before that by Vicky Asnaran, who was the Deputy Inspector General at the time. And so when this dispatch came down to Miscavige, she recommended me to him to head up this office.
So you were the head of AVCN?
I was, yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever meet L. Ron Hubbard?
Never met him, but corresponded with him like, many people in management did, back and forth.
So now I'm terribly confused, but it's going to be easy. It's going to be easy to answer this question. So this is all when L. Ron Hubbard was completely off in seclusion.
Yes.
It was my understanding that L. Ron Hubbard only communicated through Pat Broker, communicated to David Miscavige through Pat Broker. I didn't realize anybody was getting communication from L. Ron Hubbard. How were you getting communication from L. Ron Hubbard?
Well, I was getting him the same way. I'll explain, because basically everybody was getting communications from L. Ron Hubbard, and the way that it worked was there would be runs, traffic runs or whatever, where Pat Broker would meet clandestinely with David Miscavige at some truck stop somewhere on the Interstate 10 in San Bernardino, and bankers boxes would be exchanged of things coming from L. Ron Hubbard and things going to L. Ron Hubbard. And then the things coming from L. Ron Hubbard came to what was the Upper Villa at the Gold Base. There was a staff there. It was called the Comm Center, the Communications Center, and their job when the boxes came in was there would be all these dictation tapes from L. Ron Hubbard, and they would transcribe them. They actually would listen to him, just dictate into a dictaphone. They would transcribe them, and these became the LRH advices with the asterisk on them. And once they transcribed them, they proofread them, and everybody would be sitting on pins and needles waiting for them to go around and deliver them to your desk. And I got copies of everything. And most people only got what was applicable to them. But, David Miscavige got copies of everything. Senior executives got that stuff. And that's how he actually, sent advices and orders at that time.
In all of these years of hearing all of these stories, I had no idea LRH's involvement was that comprehensive and complete. I thought it was like he'd hand Pat Broker a few dispatches. I thought that it was completely within Pat Broker's and David Miscavige's ability to essentially invent shit that L. Ron Hubbard wanted done. I didn't know he was sending dictations and tapes and everything. That's incredible.
Oh, yeah. It was like clockwork. He disappeared for a while and he'd be out of communication for months on end. And so, management would just basically be doing whatever they thought they needed to do, to run Scientology and to take care of his affairs. But then all of a sudden a phone call would come, and then David Miscavige would drive to a secret location. There was a famous black van. Okay. It was like a black shed that was tricked out like the Scooby-Doo machine, and had fur on the sea, inside and all that. And that black van is famous to any Sea Org members or anybody at the international base at the time, because that was the secret vehicle that Miscavige would drive out in. Pat Broker had a silver van, and every once in a while he would drive that actually onto the base, but he kept incognito. He didn't want people to see who he was. But if you saw the silver van up in the Upper Villa parking lot, you knew not to go walking up there because he'd be up there. But it basically, they would meet. One time I had to actually, Miscavige called me, and I had to actually drive to a truck stop in San Bernardino because something he was supposed to be sent up had been forgotten. And so I drove up to this truck stop, and then he had me come inside, and there was Pat Broker and him, and I dropped it off, and they said, thanks very much. And then I got back in my car and I drove back to the base. But that happened when LRH was on the lines. That happened every Friday morning. Like the statistics would be Thursday at 2:00. That would be the end of the production week in Scientology. People would stay up all night writing reports to L. Ron Hubbard, and then Friday morning, Miscavige would drive out to meet up with Pat Broker somewhere.
Every Friday.
Yeah.
Dictations and orders and everything would come in from L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, pretty much every Friday. Sometimes, depending upon what Hubbard was doing, we would hear from him. But we didn't know where he was. Of course, now we know he was at the up in Creston, California, at the ranch where he died. But they had another property in Newberry, California, and that's where a couple of staff like John Brousseau and Steve Foff and also Pat Broker would hang out. There was like safe houses. They had like a couple of safe houses. They also had a location in Devore, California, which is right by the Cajon Pass. And there was a mobile home there, and that was a safe location. So they had Pat Broker worked out this whole intricate way of making sure that L. Ron Hubbard's location was not found.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so you joined the Sea Org in 1976 and were roommates with David Miscavige.
Right.
Where was that?
In Clearwater.
Oh, in Clearwater.
Yeah, in Clearwater. I graduated high school in June of 1976, and I joined the Sea Organization. And I came down to Clearwater right after 4th of July, the bicentennial, 1976. And David Miscavige had dropped out of high school a month before because he had just turned 16 and joined the Sea Organization. And I got asked if I wanted to be a Commodore's messenger. And of course, at the time I was sent, I wanted to be an auditor, a processor, and that's why I went to Flag. But yeah, who didn't want to go work with L. Ron Hubbard at the time? So I went and was doing my estates project force for the Commodore's Messenger up on the 9th floor of the Fort Harrison Hotel.
Wow. So 76. What other people that we now know still, like a Mike Rinder or Tom DeVocht or Debbie Cook? What are some names of people that people might recognize who you met back then in 76 in Clearwater?
Well, you mainly had the senior messengers who had just come from the flagship Apollo. So there was Annie Broker, who was Annie Rush at the time. She was married to a guy named Charlie Rush. She was the commanding officer of the Commodore's Messenger organization. There was Dee Dee Riesdorf. There was Gail Riesdorf. There was Janice Gillum Grady, who's, of course, my partner now on our channel. There was Terry Gillum Gamboa, who was Janice's sister. Shelley Miscavige. There was another messenger by the name of Tanya Burden, who later sued L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology and became an infamous character. There was Mark Yeager, and then my future wife, Julie Catano. They both were just 16 years old, and they still had to go to Clearwater High School, and so did Shelley Miscavige.
No way.
Yeah.
Shelley Miscavige went to Clearwater High.
Yes. Yeah. Shelley, my future wife, Julie, and Mark Yeager, they all were under 16 when the Flag Land Base was set up, and legally they had to go to school. So they would go to Clearwater High School during the day, and then after that they would stand watch working, for L. Ron Hubbard in the Commodore's Messenger org until they turned 16, and then they dropped out.
Wow, that's incredible. I'd never heard that before. I mean, I live like 5 minutes from Clearwater High.
Yeah.
It just recently went through a whole massive renovation. It looks like a brand new, beautiful school.
Yeah, and at the time they were trying to keep, United Churches was the front group for Scientology. People didn't know it was Scientology, so they didn't want to attract any attention. So they all had to go to school.
So they're going to school during the day, and when they're not in school, they're some of the senior most executives in Scientology.
Right. Right, exactly. And the funny thing is, I'll tell you the funny thing about high school. I mean, I had just graduated from high school, okay, and I was a National Senior Honor Society member. I was an Eagle Scout. I got accepted to like 3 universities. Instead, I joined the Sea Organization. When I went to my dorm room up on the 9th floor with David Miscavige, I had my Letterman's jacket. I had my diploma from graduating, and I'll never forget it. DM picked it up and he looked at it. He goes, "God, you graduated high school." And he goes, I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're probably the only person on the 9th floor that ever graduated high school." Because he had just dropped out at 16. He goes, "How could you take it? All the drugs and the this and the that. I had to get out. I couldn't wait to join the Sea Organization."
Incredible. I thought he was going to insult you for wasting your time having done something so worthless.
He did. Absolutely. It was meant as a dig.
Wow. Were you actually, I'm just imagining this. Were you told that you couldn't wear your Letterman's jacket because it was sort of a WOG sentimentality or whatever?
I don't remember that ever being said, but I eventually lost it years later. I don't know. I wish I still had it, but I don't have it anymore.
Interesting. Okay, so what was your role in relation to Miscavige?
Okay, when my closest role was when the corporate liaison office was set up. Okay, so he spent the majority of his time in Los Angeles at Author Services, and he also was known as Special Project Ops or Special Project Operator. So he was in charge of all of the missions that were sorting out doing the corporate sort out and trying to get the all clear for L. Ron Hubbard to get rid of all the lawsuits and the IRS investigations and all that, so that L. Ron Hubbard could return to the gold base and make the movies and do his research and live there. That was basically why L. Ron Hubbard was in hiding. So I was set up there as his liaison because he wasn't up at the base very often. And so we would stay in communication. And the first things I dealt with was getting all of the L. Ron Hubbard spaces up to par. He had offices all over the Gold Base. He had his house up at Bonneview, making sure that they were renovated and that they were up to his standards. Also, all the production lines at the Golden Era Productions, they did lecture mixing, and they did movie and sound recording and all that. So I oversaw, getting all of that stuff set up and established and getting it approved by not only David Miscavige, but L. Ron Hubbard. We would actually send up submissions on all the production lines. So we got all of the audio and video production lines set up and approved. And then the big thing was, I oversaw the building of the music studio up there, up at Gold at Gilman Hot Springs. I wasn't the construction supervisor. That was a guy named Steve Willett, but it was built with RPF labor, Rehabilitation Project Force labor. But I was the person that answered to Miscavige and send him reports daily. And then he and Shelley would come up to the base maybe once a month, maybe twice a month on a weekend, and then go back down to LA. So that was where my dealings were.
Really interesting stuff. Okay, let's take a look at a couple super chats here.
Okay.
The Beach, love the entertainment. Be careful. Can't Graham strike your channel regardless of legal reasons? No, Graham has already tried to strike every video where I have mentioned his name, and YouTube basically tells him to shove it up his ass. So no, there are protections built in to protect against just blatant harassment. So thank you for that. Maria de Jesus Gutierrez says, you got lost because the ASI, RTC, etc. division is a shell game. Yes, it's a shell game. I actually, for the most part, very much understand well the relationship between ASI, RTC, CST, CSI, all that stuff. I understand that very, very well. Some of how it evolved over the years, I'm a little shaky on. But yeah. That's true.
We're going to try and fill in some of that stuff with our videos too. Like Janice and I talked about, we're going to do a whole video on the establishment of the Religious Technology Center, who was involved with it, what it was supposed to do before Miscavige got involved. See, because a lot of the stuff he took over after L. Ron Hubbard died. Okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that people saw after L. Ron Hubbard died were not the way it was, and was not the way it was supposed to be. Now, I'm not saying it was good, but we're going to give some of that background information.
Totally cool. One person I would love to hear from is Vicky Asnaran. Do you think she has some, she's not allowed to talk, or what do you know?
Probably. She got paid off. I mean, her and her husband, Rick Asnaran, sued Scientology, and then basically they were paid off, and they lived down in Belize or somewhere. They have an offshore, fishing business down there or something.
Yeah.
But we can tell stories. We're in contact with some people that were involved with the Religious Technology Center when it was first set up. Of course, I was there as well. Jesse Prince was brought in, and he was there. But anyway,
I'd like to interview Jesse. Actually, have you? I emailed him not that long ago.
He and I actually, he was my roommate here at my place here in Las Vegas for about 2 years, up until about 2 years ago.
I've seen some people asking for interviews with Nancy, and Nancy and Jesse are married, right?
No, they're not together anymore. They are not married.
Oh, okay. Are you in touch with either of them?
I haven't been for a while, but I could get a hold of them if I needed to, but I haven't been in touch with them for a while.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have to.
I'm sorry. I was going to say one other thing too. And then after we left, of course, I finally left in 1990 when Miscavige assaulted me. I finally escaped. But anyway, then we were involved with all of the fair game tactics and stuff. We were the first people that David LeBeau was sicked on, and of course, then there was Lisa McPherson Trust stuff and all that. So I was involved in a lot of that stuff, and so we're going to tell those stories too.
Very cool. Yeah. So if you're watching right now, do me a favor, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button, jump over to, well, I have the link, but remind me the actual name of the channel.
Yeah, Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion, and it's with Mark Fisher and Janice Gillum Grady. And please subscribe. Please like our videos. We're going to be doing live chats here in the near future where people can ask us questions directly. I mean, I think we're a little unique because, every channel is great, but Janice worked directly, as you know, with Hubbard for 6 hours a day, 7 days a week for like 13 years. And then I worked with Miscavige, for the last 6 years that I was in the Sea Org. And I was close to him in terms of what was going on. So.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear all the stories. So this was sort of just a taste, you guys. We'll do more chats here on this channel. You'll see tons of chats over on their channel. That's the purpose of the extended SPTV network. More stories, more stories. Get out there, the better. All right, thanks for doing this with me, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for all you do.
All right, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, oh, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right